Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Sundance Spotlight. And today we are talking about Something in the Dirt. And I am so excited because you all know how much I love editing, and we talk about editing in films and here all the time. And today I get to talk to an editor. We're talking to Michael Felk today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing really great. I have to say, Sundance has been a little different this year. How's your Sundance been going?
Familiar because I'm home and I'm by my computer, but it's been going well so far, all things considered.
Going well. So yeah, I actually had Corona almost the whole Sundance experience. So
Oh
it's
no.
been nice to be able to just like turn on the Roku and all the movies are there and I'm in bed with my dogs and my drink and my cough drops. But today I seem to be doing really well, which is nice. Yesterday I got to watch Something in the Dirt, and I have to say it was quite an experience. This movie is not what I expected at all, which I think is why we love Sundance movies, right? Is because the movies that we get to see at Sundance are so unexpected, and most of the time in the best ways. I have to say, I'm not a huge fan when somebody says, okay, you're going to see like a horror thriller movie, because that's not a genre that I love because I don't love getting scared. However, I do love thrillers because I do love like the suspense of what's coming next. And this is more of a suspense, although there are some very weird, kind of scary, kind of out of this world stuff happening in the film. So kind
Yeah.
of describe the film for us really quick.
Yeah, it's a weird, I guess the way to describe it would be like a docu narrative where it's about two people who live in this apartment building that get to know each other, and one of them had just moved into the apartment with just moved in, rented it out with no lease, sight unseen. And while moving him in, they discover a crazy phenomenon that happens in that apartment. And instead of getting like scared or freaked out by it, they actually are like pretty fascinated by it and decided to record a documentary of what they find. But what they end up uncovering is something much weirder, something darker, and something a little bit more sinister than they both had imagined.
And I have to say, like, so I went to film school in LA and I've lived there on and off a lot. And when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, seriously, only in LA. Only in LA would you say, okay, I'm going to get an apartment sight unseen? Because most of the time you're like, I'm just happy to get an apartment that I can afford, right? So you're
Yeah.
like, I'm in, I'm good. And then when you discover something crazy, you're like, hey, what should we do about the situation? You know what? Let's make a documentary about it. Like, I feel like this is only either my friends or only in LA, because I feel like that's what we do now though, right? We document everything. And I loved right off the bat in the film, um especially with the editing, is it's trying to tell us, the movie's trying to tell us something through the editing and through the camera work. And so there's all of these quick takes through a lot of electrical things, a lot of technology, and I love that. So right off the bat I'm like, okay, like this is going to be something that you're not going to be holding the hand of the audience and pulling them along saying this is the story. There was a lot of room for the audience to discover as much as the characters are discovering as they go along.
Yeah, I mean that's you put it in a very succinct way. I mean, like, yeah, it's a the way the format of the movie goes about. You really are just going down this, I guess, crazy rabbit hole with both of these characters. And as you mentioned with L.A., I mean, everyone is there for some sort of dream chasing of some kind. And given how expensive it is, of course, you would take an apartment sight unseen, because if it's cheap and you can afford it, you will make do. And then when an opportunity like a phenomenon like that comes in your apartment, you're going to want to take advantage of that and see if you can see, even more money and more success. So it's a crazy journey of a movie you take with these guys.
Let's talk about the guys for a minute, because these characters could not be more opposite and more um I don't know. I feel like in two characters, you've kind of hit everyone I've ever met, right? So John is this character that by the end of the movie, I just want to punch in the face, by the way. Like I'm, and
Yeah.
I know that that's hopefully purposeful. um, but at the beginning you think, okay, John is like this very like put together guy. He knows his life. He's very friendly, which is nice in LA when you move in somewhere and somebody's being super friendly with you. He offers stuff to this guy he's never met. Not only just like things, but like the story of his life. Like he's just giving him information about himself, plus things like sofas and stuff. And then
Yeah.
we and then we go to the next character who is just he is more of that dreamer, right? He
Hmm.
is more of that like I'm kind of go with the flow. I'm kind of like every day is an experience because I've experienced things that I don't want to talk about. So he kind of is just kind of this floater, right? But
Yeah.
John makes him feel like maybe he's not as good as John.
Oh yeah. I mean, what both of these characters have in common is that given, I guess you get hints of it in the movie that the world around them has kind of gone a little crazy.
Yeah.
And like they're trying to find their purpose in this strange, like, we don't want to say that this is like a pandemic movie, but it does talk about people going through something like a pandemic. And so when they're in this isolation, they try to find their own purpose. And that's what they're trying to both figure out together, is like, what is our purpose in life? And what's the difference between the two of them is how they go about that. Like Levi is this like sweet, almost puppy dog kind of guy who's had just a
Yeah.
bad run of luck. And he's just trying to do the right thing, trying to do what's good for people, but he also is trying to get a better foothold in life. Meanwhile, John, he's kind of had a big turmoil thing that's happened with his life. He's lost his husband and he's now taken up smoking, and he only sees a way of getting that foothold by controlling others, and especially controlling
Yeah.
Levi.
And I feel like there is so much smoking in this movie. Like all they're doing other than driving each other crazy and trying to figure out what's going on is smoking. And I'm like, how many packs of cigarettes did they go through just to make this movie? And I feel like is John a smoker regularly?
Well, no, and in fact, like that's a thing that happens over the course of the movie, is that he takes
Yeah.
up smoking, and
Yeah.
we even have a moment in the movie where Levi calls him out very briefly that he doesn't
Uh-huh.
know how to properly smoke.
Yes, he
He's
mentions it, and I just thought that was so telling because, as I'm watching it, and a lot of, filmmakers kind of notice this is like when an actor doesn't know how to, and he does it so purposefully, but he also mentions when he first meets Levi is that he had been sober for 10 years. And the minute this anomaly happens, he's just like, I mean, like, give me all the drinks, which reminds me a little bit of when we all hit the pandemic, right?
yes,
Is like
yes,
we're all at home, we're all drinking, we're all vices. My vice was food. Like I started cooking everything.
same.
So everyone in my house gained weight. We're all trying to get it off now, but like that was my vice. And so it was as much as the elements of the movie were a little bit out there, I feel like it was still very something that you can latch onto because we all just kind of went through like, what is this thing going on in our lives? Like, why are we all home all of a sudden? How do we all deal with each other in close proximities? And then you realize who people are that you maybe didn't know before. So you have these two people come together that don't know each other,
Hmm.
and then they're learning about each other along the way, and they're not clicking. Like, they're just not clicking at all. And they're second guessing each other. And so then you, as you're watching the movie, are second guessing, well, which one of these guys is right? Which one should I latch onto? And so it's just kind of this whirlwind of what is happening.
I mean, yeah, we all lean into our vices when things get incredibly tough in our lives. Like, I'm with you 100%. Mine is just any type of junk food. I grew up on junk food in front of movies. And so when the pandemic hit, my dad calls it gaining the COVID-19, the 19 pounds.
Yeah,
So,
I did the COVID 25. So if you
you
just
know
did
what?
19, kudos.
19 was the cute title name. It was actually way more.
Yeah.
But like it like pretty much is like what happens where we're trying to gain that control in a situation we can't control. And
Mhm.
you could see that within the editing of the movie.
Mhm.
Like as the movie starts, they have these clear threads that they are
Mhm.
trying to capture on film and honestly show the world in order to help better their lives. But as the movie goes on and the threads don't add up, the edit starts to change. The characters begin a little more frustrated. They start trying to cheat some of the threads, and you can see that in the fabric of the editing, where now,
Mhm.
as a documentary, which is supposed to tell you what you're actually seeing, the truth,
Yeah.
that gets all muddled and misshapen to the point where you can't even tell what's real or not anymore.
And you being the editor, which I thought was so smart, because as they're getting kind of frustrated and angsty, you are, you're setting the speed and the tone of this film. And like you said, those threads, they start getting like more and quicker and
Mhm.
in and out. So we're going in and out of not only what they're doing, but then like childhood videos, and then like shots of things. There's so many different mediums. You've got photography, you've got animation, you've got home videos, you have every single camera that they have, because they've got the security camera in the house, they've got the phone, they've got all these things that you are having to masterfully put together to make it cohesive, which is very hard when you have so many mediums, to not bring an audience member out of the
Mhm.
film. And I feel like with each edit and with each medium, it just sucked us in more. It was like, because we're like, wait, what did we just see? And so you find yourself like thinking, wait, now I'm a conspiracy theorist, because what was that little, shot that I just saw? And then you're trying to go back and think about what they said and then still pay attention to what's going forward. So I'm taking notes and thinking about what conspiracies I remember hearing about. And then you show pictures of LA on all these monumental areas that I've seen. I'm like, wait a second, has that been there the whole time?
Oh my god, exactly. The movie wants the viewer to see how far they will go in
Yes.
terms of like connecting these threads, because it's honest at first, or at least it's like you could see where the connections can be made. But like you're going around to some LA landmarks and that stuff's tweaked in the movie, so it just makes like
Mhm.
adding some like a death date or something on a grave that ends up being a phone number that leads to
Yes.
calling a character, like that stuff. You're just like, I don't. And it really tests the audience's willingness to go down the rabbit hole. And that's why it was always important by the end of the days to make sure, like, no matter how far the rabbit hole we go down, if the audience doesn't want to go down this conspiracy rabbit hole anymore, which it happens, it like I
Yeah.
was testing my patience in the times of that movie. The character work is the most important, because you can still see the honest nature of both of those characters shine through, and that's something that you really can't cut out if you're like filming yourself all the time.
Right, right. And I love that when you go, without giving too much away, because I don't want to do that. I definitely want people to figure this out. And you still have time to go buy a ticket to the second screening of this film, because you have through, I believe, the 28th to see this movie through Sundance. But and I highly recommend it, because it was so different and so strange in the best way. But when they're going back and they each have a chance to look at footage that the other was captured of the other person while they were alone in the room on like the security footage, and they're both like, you're not taking this seriously. Like they both had those moments, and I thought that was really great, like capturing those moments, because you think John is so serious all the time. So when you see, the footage of, messing around, you think, okay, well, that's totally his character. But when you see John messing around, I was like, okay, like he's just as messy as this other guy. One of my favorite editing shots in this film was when he discovers the floating door. And he's
Mm.
talking so quickly because he wants to get this lie across, right? And so the edits go as quickly as he's talking. He's like, I found the floating door, there it is, and it was just wide open, and he clips the thing.
You want to know? You want to know a funny tale with that? That's one of the last things we cut together, and it's because the original cut of this movie, in a true crazy conspiracy theorist form, was 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there are a lot of scenes that are not in the movie you saw.
Right.
But we had to find unique ways to get this at least into a palatable, like, under 2 hours. We could ramble all day. That's what we found out in the edit and that we
Right.
loved. But we came to that point, and we got creative because we needed to keep the threads going. That was really important for both directors, was like, never lose the thread, because this is still truly a conspiracy theorist point of view where we can't cheat any corners. So when we got to that point in the edit where we're like, we need to get to from point A to point B, we just leaned into the tools of the documentary trade, which is like John now going more suspicious and more like manic and sleep deprived. He's like taking like energy pills and getting no sleep. He's recording every conversation he has and hoping to find new threads. So when that point happens and he's like, I figured it out, like Charlie Day, Always Sunny, like red yarn from one side of the room to the other, connecting this, he does go through very quickly. So it's really good observation that you point that out, because that's something we fully put together in the edit for sure.
Nice. Well, it worked really well. Yeah, I think both of the characters have some endearing moments. I definitely think I lean towards Levi a little bit more. And I don't know if that's, mapped out that way. But it's funny because I think I know more people like John, and I think I know more people on the internet like John. It's just, there's so many moments where he just dismisses Levi's connections to things, when sometimes Levi seems a lot more logical in his thinking, and then John will pull something out that he like quotes nobody, like he's like, some podcast I saw somewhere says this, and that's way more notable than you standing and telling me your weight right now. That's, I mean, something you can physically see and grasp. And I feel like that's really going on in the world right now, is you have people that are making up things or throwing out facts, everywhere, that have nothing to do with anything. And so many people are grabbing on and saying, I believe it, where you have some people that are like, I have this physical thing, you can see it, and still somebody saying that's not real. That's
Yeah,
not real.
I mean, we all have people we know in our lives that not to be too binary, but are a little of a Levi and a little bit of a John.
Yes.
And Levi and John both have these, like, again, things have happened to them that have put them in such a dour state in their lives. And how we'll react to it is what makes us human, or what defines your character. And all throughout his life, like, Levi has had all these like horrible things that have just kind of happened to him. He's like been arrested for something that's with a charge that's like way worse than the actual crime.
Yeah.
He's had family misfortune that is terribly tragic, and yet he still looks up like, hey, like, if I just live an honest, good life, and I still like try to do what's right for the world, then my soul is clean. Like, he's just like, he's like, that's what feels right to him. And meanwhile, John is just like, well, life's dealt me a bad hand. I have to do everything I can to change that fortune for me, while refusing to look inward on why he got there in the first place, which is actions that he has made in the past or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what do you think was probably like your favorite part of editing? Like, because it's not something like a project you get to do all the time. And you probably will not do a project like this again.
Not on the horizon, not that I see, but like, I would say, I mean, my favorite editing actually comes from the most simple thing, and it's an emotional climax of the movie, which, not to spoil anything, but it is just two characters talking.
Yeah.
And up to this point, the movie has unloaded a manic mind of images and theories, and it's kind of all like adding up and falling apart while tearing these two characters apart. And at that point of the movie, where we have this emotional climax, it's just two characters talking. We don't cut to any other footage. They're
Mhm.
just sitting there filming each other and talking. And that's one of the most difficult scenes in the movie to edit, because you really need to, get these two characters like letting it all out, finding a some sort of closure, whether they succeed or not. And it really just allows you to see their true natures. And it was
Yeah.
really fun to cut because we had like 20 different versions between me and the directors, Justin and Aaron. We were just massaging, just being like, what does this mean when he says this? What do you mean when he says this? Because there's, a lot of ways we can go with when they're talking like that. And it ends up being my favorite scene in the movie because, it's all of the stuff, all of the chase is out of the way, and their hearts are just bared out right there and
Yeah.
then.
In the movie, I think is it 2 hours? Are we
It
at the
is
2-hour
just
mark?
under 2 hours.
Just
Like I would
under
say
2 hours, yeah.
1 hour 56. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 hour 56. So it's just under 2 hours. But again, trying to put all the puzzle pieces together, it doesn't seem like it's an almost 2 hour, movie. 2021 was the year of 2 and 3 hour movies. And as a film critic, like having to watch so many of those, can get a little tedious. But the pacing of the film is so good that I think you have those moments where you can breathe as an audience member, where you have, some of those moments like you just talked about. And then you have those moments where it's like, okay, da 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 da, and you get your heart racing, and you're trying to figure out, and and they throw in a lot of things that we're all familiar with when it comes to conspiracy theories, which I think was super important because when you're going this kind of outlandish in a story, bringing it back in and pulling us back in, not only with the LA monuments, but the different things like what could this possibly be? And going through like the different lists of, what this could be. And, is it a ghost? Is it, energy? Is it an alien? Is it our imagination? Am I having a mental break? At some point, he said, he's like, am I okay? I don't know you very well. Am I having a mental break? No, I think that's something totally different. You could both be having a mental break. Like neither of you are educated enough to make that decision. I felt like some points I was having a mental break.
I mean, we never go in like presenting a movie being like, I want the audience to have this specific feeling. But when we were watching it, we're like, I hope people go as manic as these two do, because
Yeah.
it's that chase. And you know, when you're really just sifting through like link after link, like when you go and like you're searching through the internet and you just follow a link that leads to an article that then leads to this link and you start going down a rabbit hole like that,
Yeah.
it all feels very fast. And it
Yeah.
all feels like you're just being overloaded with information to the point where you can't even clock time. So it was really important to slow down, and that climax scene I mentioned, but also there's a scene where they just chat on the rooftop and smoke, like,
Yeah.
and it really helps put their like realign themselves after they just keep going down these rabbit holes to get to know each other. So there's a lot of ebb and flow that comes with this movie in terms of the perception of time.
Well, I definitely think that it is a fun ride. And so if you still have time to watch this at Sundance, I will be putting the link that will take you directly to the page where you can get your ticket for this movie. And I appreciate your time, Michael, today. And again, this is Sundance Spotlight, Something in the Dirt. Is there anything else you want to tell everyone about the film before we head out today?
No, just when you watch it, go in with an open mind, and you're gonna have a wild time. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And everybody, go ahead and comment on the video. I'll be happy to get back to you as well. And check out the review. Will also be out tomorrow. You can check it out on all of the streaming places or at whattoseewithval.com. Thank you guys so much.